I was never the type to blow up over cake. I'm not petty like that. But when you've spent years keeping the peace, swallowing your pride, and bending backwards to be the bigger person, a moment like this, it sticks. My name's Cole. I'm 38. I work in real estate, mostly flipping mid-range homes and renting out duplexes on the side. I'm not flashy, never really been. My idea of a good weekend is grilling in the backyard with my son, throwing a football around, maybe catching a game with my neighbor, Rick. Just a regular guy. Nothing special. But that's the thing, right? When you're not loud, people think they can walk all over you. Especially family. My sister, Amber, is 2 years older than me. Growing up, she always had a flair for theatrics. Everything was a crisis or a performance. She wasn't evil, just exhausting. Our parents catered to her meltdowns like they were responding to natural disasters. I remember once, when we were kids, she screamed because I got the blue bowl she liked. She threw her cereal across the room and cried until Mom let her stay home from school. I got grounded. That kind of thing sticks with you, even when you laugh it off later. As adults, we were never close. We drifted, as most siblings do, but not for lack of proximity. We both stayed in town. I built a life here. Got married. Had a son, Max. He's 8 now. Amber had a kid too, Hunter, who's 6 and already acting like a carbon copy of her. Loud. Demanding. The kind of kid who doesn't hear no without a tantrum attached to it. The kind of kid you don't really want around your own kid, but you smile and nod and make the playdates anyway because it's family. Amber's been a single mom since Hunter was born. She's never talked about his dad, and I've never asked. We've never had the kind of relationship where I could dig into her personal life without it turning into a lecture. She always has something to prove. How hard she's working, how no one understands her struggle, how I could never know what it's like. I get it, single parenting is hard. I've offered help, quiet help, grocery cards, covering Hunter's school trip when she forgot, even letting them stay a few weeks in one of my rentals when her AC went out last summer. I don't parade it around. I just help. That's how I was raised. Or maybe it's just how I've decided to be, in spite of how we were raised. Anyway, the birthday. Max had been counting down to his birthday for weeks. We were finally having a proper party again after a couple quiet years. Backyard balloons, some of his school friends, a rented bounce house. Nothing crazy, but enough to make him feel like the center of the universe for a day. He picked out a dinosaur-themed cake, chocolate with green frosting, little edible rocks, and a T-Rex smashing through the side like it was coming out of Jurassic Park. We ordered it from a specialty baker across town. Cost me more than I want to admit. But Max's face when he saw it? Worth every penny. Amber arrived late, of course. She swept in like a storm 20 minutes after we started singing Happy Birthday, dragging Hunter by the hand while shouting something about parking nightmares. She didn't even say hi to me, just dropped her purse on the kitchen counter and made a beeline for the drinks. Hunter, meanwhile, made himself at home by grabbing a balloon sword from one of the other kids and immediately whacking a girl in the head with it. I was halfway across the yard, greeting one of Max's teachers, when I saw it happen. The girl started crying. Hunter laughed. Amber didn't even notice. I pulled him aside and gave him a soft but firm, "Hey, that's not okay, buddy." He stared at me like I'd spoken a different language. Amber saw the tail end of it and swooped over like a vulture. "Cole, seriously?" she said, flipping her sunglasses onto her head. "He's 6. Don't talk to him like he's some criminal." "I didn't," I said. "I just told him to be careful. He hit someone. He was playing. You've got a yard full of kids. What do you expect?" She turned to Hunter, smoothing his hair down like he was some victim of injustice. "You're okay, sweetie. Uncle Cole's just being dramatic." That right there. That tone. It wasn't new. I'd heard it all my life. The way she dismisses anything she doesn't like as overreaction, how she rewrites reality in real time to suit whatever story she's telling herself. I forced a smile and walked away. Max was already tugging at my sleeve to help with the piñata. His happiness was the only thing that mattered. The rest of the party went as you'd expect. A little chaos, a lot of sugar, kids screaming and laughing and spilling juice on the patio furniture. But I noticed something. Every time Hunter didn't get his way, something broke. When he didn't win a party game, he threw the plastic prize across the lawn. When another kid took the last cupcake before him, he stomped on a paper plate. And Amber? She was too busy scrolling through her phone or telling another mom about her insane boss to do a thing. I held my tongue. I always do. We made it to cake time. Max stood at the head of the table, beaming like it was Christmas and his birthday rolled into one. Everyone was singing. I lit the candles. He closed his eyes and made a wish. Right as he leaned forward to blow them out, Hunter surged forward, both arms out like a linebacker, and slammed his bare, frosting-loving hands, right into the cake. Hard, like he was digging for treasure. Green frosting flew. The T-Rex split down the middle. One of the candles toppled. For a moment, no one moved. Even the kids were stunned. And then Hunter shouted at the top of his lungs, "Now no one gets any," with this twisted little grin like he was proud of what he'd done. Max's face crumpled. He didn't cry, not right away. He just looked at me, confused, like he couldn't quite process what had happened. Like he was asking, silently, why? I looked at Amber. She blinked, surprised, then gave this weak laugh. Wow. Okay, that was dramatic, huh? She didn't apologize. She didn't scold him. She just walked over and said, "We'll clean it up," like that was the point. I didn't say a word. I picked up Max, who was now blinking hard, lips pressed tight, and carried him into the house. We sat on the couch in silence while the party slowly fizzled outside. People started leaving. Some awkwardly offered to help. I shook my head. That night, after everyone had gone and the house was quiet again, I got a text from Amber. No apology. No explanation. Just, "You're overreacting. Don't bother coming around anymore if this is how you're gonna act." I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back, "Cool. I'll unlist the house title tomorrow." I hit send. By morning, I had 38 missed calls lighting up my phone. And that's where things really started unraveling. I didn't answer the calls. Not the first 5, not the next 10. By the time the count hit 38, I had already put my phone on silent and taken Max out for pancakes at that old diner on 5th. He didn't say much, just quietly pushed his scrambled eggs around the plate while the waitress tried to cheer him up with extra whipped cream on his hot chocolate. I was angry, yeah, but more than that, I was tired. Tired of pretending Amber's behavior was normal. Tired of pretending her kid's chaos was just high energy. Tired of excusing years of entitlement and disrespect because she was family. Max finally looked up at me halfway through breakfast and asked, "Did I do something wrong?" And that cracked me wide open inside. "No, buddy," I said, putting down my fork. "You did everything right. Some people just don't know how to be kind." He nodded like he understood, but he was 8. He shouldn't have to. By noon, Amber had moved on from phone calls to texts. The first few were the same tone as the night before. "You're seriously blowing this out of proportion. He's 6, Cole. 6. You embarrassed me in front of everyone by acting like it was a funeral instead of a cake." Then came the guilt-laced ones. "Hunter's been crying since last night. I'm a single mom doing her best. You think you're so much better because you've got money and a backyard." Then came the shift. "Wait, what house title? Are you joking? Cole, seriously, what house title?" And that's when the silence flipped sides. Now she was the one panicking. Good. Let her sit with it. See, about 4 years ago, Amber had been in a rough spot. She was between jobs, freshly kicked out by her ex, the one she still doesn't talk about, and sleeping in her car with Hunter. I didn't find out until our cousin, Jess, ran into her at a gas station and called me. I didn't ask questions. I just gave her a key. It was one of the rental homes I'd bought early in my career. A small, single-story place in a decent neighborhood with a fenced yard. Nothing fancy, but clean and livable. I told her she could stay there rent-free until she got back on her feet. She cried, thanked me, promised she'd only be there a few months. She stayed for 3 years. In that time, I covered repairs, utilities, and even the property taxes because she kept saying she was almost there and just needed one more shot. I never pushed. I figured family helps family, even when it hurts a little. But a few months back, I quietly had the title transferred out of my rental LLC and into my personal name, just in case. I hadn't told Amber, but now I was glad I'd made that move. After the birthday fiasco and her message telling me not to come around anymore, I figured, okay, wish granted. By Monday, the calls stopped. But the whispers started. Aunt Mel called to check in, with that syrupy tone that always meant she'd been recruited. She talked in circles about how kids will be kids, and how Amber had a lot on her plate, and how you wouldn't want to tear the family apart over a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, I said. Her kid ruined my son's birthday cake. She watched and laughed, then told me I was overreacting. Still, Mel sighed. You did say something about unlisting a house title, and that's got everyone nervous. Funny how that part got everyone's attention, huh? Cole, she started, but I hung up. That week, Amber finally called herself. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was a mess of half sobs and half accusations. I don't even know what you meant, okay? What house? Are you threatening me? Are you seriously gonna evict your sister over a cake? I didn't reply, but I did call my lawyer. Now before you think I was being ruthless, let me explain. I wasn't planning to kick her out immediately. I just wanted to protect myself. I had this gut feeling like something was coming. Something bigger than ruined frosting or passive-aggressive texts. I was right, because a week later, I got a notice from the city. A permit request filed under my property's address for a home daycare. Amber was trying to open a daycare out of my house. She hadn't told me, hadn't asked. She'd gone straight to the city, listed herself as the property manager, and started the paperwork. My name was nowhere on it, even though I owned the deed outright. I sat at my kitchen table with the permit in one hand and my coffee mug in the other, heart thudding like a drum. This wasn't just overstepping. This was deliberate, calculated. She'd clearly been planning it for a while. Probably saw it as her way out, finally making her own money, starting her own business. And she was using my house, my name, my property, without permission. I called the zoning office the next morning and had the permit flagged for fraudulent information. The lady on the phone was polite but firm. Sir, if you're the actual owner and your name's not listed, that's a violation. We'll need to investigate. Amber showed up at my house that evening. She didn't knock, just marched up the driveway and started pounding on the door like she was the police. Cole, open up. I know you're in there. Max peeked around the hallway corner, wide-eyed. I gently pushed him back toward the living room and stepped outside, closing the door behind me. Amber was in full meltdown mode, hair wild, face flushed, pacing the porch like she couldn't stand still. You flagged my permit, she spat. Why would you do that? I've been working on this for months. I folded my arms. Without telling me. On a house that's not yours. You said I could stay there. Stay? Not run a business. Not lie to the city. Not commit fraud. She flinched. Fraud? Are you kidding me right now? You filled out a legal document claiming you manage a property you don't own. That's fraud, Amber. Her voice cracked. I was going to surprise you. Make it a legit thing. I was finally doing something for me. And your first move was lying. She didn't say anything. Just stood there, trembling with rage or fear. I couldn't tell. I'm not kicking you out, I said quietly. But I'm filing a formal termination of the verbal lease. You've got 60 days. Her jaw dropped. You're evicting me? I'm giving you 2 months to figure something out. More than most landlords would. We're not landlord and tenant, Cole. We're siblings. And siblings don't stab each other in the back. That was the moment it all shattered. She screamed, this guttural, angry sound, and stormed off the porch. But not before yelling over her shoulder. Don't expect to see Hunter again. You just cut yourself out of your nephew's life. I didn't answer. I didn't even move. Just stood there while the sun dipped below the trees and the porch light flickered on. That night, Max came to sit beside me on the couch again, like he had the morning after the party. Did Aunt Amber do something bad again? He asked, voice small. I looked at him, this little person who deserved so much more peace than our family could give him, and nodded. Yeah, but we're going to be okay. He leaned into me, warm and trusting. The next day, I started getting calls from my uncle, my cousin, even my mom. People who hadn't reached out in months suddenly wanted to talk. Amber had clearly gone nuclear, telling everyone I was throwing her and Hunter out on the street. The kicker? She posted a Facebook status. When your own brother evicts you for trying to make a better life for your son, I hope karma is real. It got 117 likes. I didn't respond. I didn't post. I didn't even like the comments defending me, because some people did defend me. Apparently not everyone had forgotten how many times I'd helped her. But a line had been crossed now, and whether she realized it or not, Amber had just turned a simmering feud into something else entirely. 2 days later, I opened my mailbox and found something that made my stomach drop. A certified envelope from a lawyer. Inside was a formal letter. Amber was suing me for wrongful eviction, verbal breach of contract, and financial damages due to business interference. And that was the breaking point. I wish I could say I laughed when I opened the envelope. That the whole thing felt so ridiculous I just tossed it on the kitchen counter and went on with my day. But I didn't laugh. I sat at my dining table for a full 20 minutes just staring at it, rereading each line like maybe the words would change the third or fourth time through. Wrongful eviction, breach of contract, emotional distress, business interference, damages totaling $92,000. Amber had actually found a lawyer willing to help her file this mess. I took a breath and turned the page. There was a typed statement attached, probably something her lawyer had helped her write. It painted a very different picture, one where she was a dedicated single mom who had been promised housing indefinitely by her successful brother, who had then cruelly turned on her when she tried to build a home daycare to support her child. She claimed I revoked her housing in retaliation after a minor disagreement at a child's birthday party. She even mentioned emotional trauma and Hunter's fear of abandonment now that they were facing displacement. I ran my hand through my hair, jaw tight. There was no way this would hold up in court. I knew that. But that didn't mean it wouldn't cause damage. Legal fees, time, reputation. Even if it got thrown out, even if the judge rolled his eyes, I'd still have to go through the motions. Hire a lawyer, file a response, miss work, explain to my business partner, Greg, why I was suddenly unavailable for showings and closings. For the first time in a long while, I felt it, that old, familiar weight pressing down. The one that makes you question if doing the right thing is even worth it. I'd spent years helping Amber, not because I wanted something in return, but because I thought that's what family did. And now, she was turning that kindness into a weapon, twisting it into a story where I was the villain. And worst of all, I couldn't even say I was surprised. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not Max, not my mom, not even Rick, my neighbor, who I usually vented to when things got tense. I kept it to myself, stewing in silence. For the next week, I went through the motions. Dropped Max off at school, smiled at clients, took calls, cooked dinner. But there was a hollowness in everything I did, like I was just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then it did. One evening, I got a call from Greg. I knew from the second he said my name that something was wrong. "Hey man," he said, voice careful. "Listen, I just had the weirdest meeting with a potential buyer for the Jefferson duplex. He brought up your name and asked if you were the guy who evicts single moms for fun." My stomach turned. "You're kidding." "I wish." He said he read about it in some community Facebook group. Something about you shutting down a home daycare and kicking your sister and nephew out onto the street. I closed my eyes. "Amber, that's what I figured. Look, I trust you. But this isn't great PR, especially when we're trying to land families looking to relocate. You might want to get ahead of it." He meant well, but the implication was clear. This could hurt business. The next morning, I woke up to find my name tagged in 3 different neighborhood threads. People arguing in comment sections. Some defending me. Others jumping to Amber's side with opinions based entirely on her version of events. One person posted a picture of my rental house with a caption that read, "This is the house where a mother and child are being forced out. Shameful." And that was when I hit bottom. Not the kind of bottom where you throw things or scream. No, this was the quiet kind. The kind where you sit on your back porch at 7 a.m., coffee gone cold in your hand, wondering if maybe it's your fault. Maybe you should have said something years ago. Set boundaries. Spoken up. Maybe you taught her, in your silence, that she could do whatever she wanted with no consequences. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But something in me went still, like a wire that had finally snapped from too much tension. That same afternoon, I took a drive out to the hills, just me and the silence. No calls. No messages. I parked at the overlook and just sat there, staring out over the trees and rooftops. It's funny how small everything looks from up high. Like all the drama and noise and pain can't quite reach you from up there. And that's when I made a decision. No more silence. No more keeping the peace at my own expense. No more letting people write my story while I stood in the background. That night, after I got home and put Max to bed, I opened my laptop and started gathering documents. Emails, texts, screenshots, lease forms, tax statements, utility bills. Even that picture I'd taken of the cake, destroyed and smeared with green frosting, with Hunter's little hands still caught in the act. I organized everything into folders, labeled and time-stamped. Then I called my lawyer, a woman named Dana I'd worked with a few times before when buying property. She listened to the situation, let out a long sigh, and said, "Well, Cole, sounds like it's about time we taught someone the difference between generosity and obligation." And just like that, the rebuild began. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't fast. But it was mine. I countersued. Not for damages, just a formal response demanding dismissal and attaching documentation proving ownership, lack of tenancy agreements, and fraudulent use of my address for business purposes. Dana filed a cease and desist to prevent Amber from spreading further false claims online. We sent copies of everything to the zoning office and flagged the daycare permit again, this time attaching the lawsuit. Meanwhile, I made quiet changes in my life. I pulled Max from his regular school carpool and started driving him myself, just in case Amber got any ideas. I called Greg and had a long, honest conversation. He backed me completely and even offered to do a short PR post on our business page about our values-driven real estate practices. We kept it vague, but the subtext was clear to anyone watching, and I started saying no. No to family members who tried to mediate on Amber's behalf. No to friends who said I should just let it go. No to the little voice in my head that kept whispering, "Maybe you are overreacting." Because I wasn't. Not anymore. The real shift, though, happened the night Max came into my office while I was sorting more documents and asked, "Is Aunt Amber mad at us?" I paused. "Yeah, buddy. She is." He fiddled with the edge of my desk. "Did we do something wrong?" I turned in my chair and looked him straight in the eyes. "No. But sometimes, doing the right thing makes people mad. Especially when they're used to getting their way." He was quiet for a second. Then he said something I'll never forget. "I'm glad you're not letting her be mean anymore." That moment, that one sentence, was the rise. Because that's when I realized I wasn't just standing up for myself. I was showing my son what strength looked like. Not loud, not cruel. Just quiet, firm, and unshakable. In the weeks that followed, things began to shift. The city zoning office officially rejected Amber's permit. Her lawyer dropped her case after Dana submitted our response, clearly realizing it was going nowhere. The Facebook gossip died down. Even the angry neighborhood threads disappeared after I posted one calm, factual comment under my own name, attaching proof of ownership and explaining the situation without drama. People backed off. Some even apologized. And Amber? She went dark. No more texts. No more calls. No more Facebook status updates. I didn't know what she was planning. I didn't trust her silence. But I wasn't afraid of it anymore. Because now I was ready. And then one quiet Thursday afternoon, a letter arrived in my mailbox that changed everything again. It was handwritten. Neat cursive on plain white stationery. No return address. Just 2 sentences. "I know what Amber did. You deserve to know everything. Call me." And at the bottom, a name I hadn't seen in years. Hunter's father. And that's where it got real. Hunter's father's name was Elijah. And the last time I'd heard his name spoken aloud was at a barbecue 7 years ago, when Amber told our aunt she didn't need a man weighing her down. After that, she erased him. No pictures. No mentions. No questions allowed. I never dug deeper, not because I didn't care, but because the topic was always a minefield. And Amber made it clear he wasn't part of the story. But now, suddenly, there he was. His signature neat and deliberate on a note in my mailbox, his name inked in the kind of cursive that made you pay attention. I stared at the letter for a long time. "I know what Amber did. You deserve to know everything. Call me." There was a number at the bottom. No area code. It was local. I waited 2 days before I dialed it. I'm not sure why. Part of me didn't believe it was real. Part of me was afraid of what I'd hear. But the curiosity clawed at me, louder than the caution. When I finally hit the call button, the voice on the other end answered on the first ring. "Cole." It was him. He didn't even wait for me to say a word. "Thank God," he said, exhaling. "I've been trying to figure out how to reach you without blowing everything up." There was something calm and deliberate about his voice, measured, like a man who'd already rehearsed what he needed to say 1,000 times. I listened for almost 30 minutes without interrupting once. And what he told me shifted everything. He and Amber had never officially broken up. They weren't married, but they'd been living together when Hunter was born. He'd supported them, financially, emotionally, fully. But things changed when Amber's business idea fell apart. Apparently, she'd tried starting a wedding planning service. Invested most of Elijah's savings. Maxed out a joint credit card. Burned through his emergency fund chasing vision boards and influencers while ignoring actual clients. When the business tanked, She blamed him. He found out she'd been lying about expenses, charging personal purchases to the business, and hiding debt. When he confronted her, she kicked him out, told everyone he'd walked out on his son. He tried to fight for custody, but Amber threatened to claim he was abusive. She never filed anything, just scared him enough to back down. Said if he even thought about a court battle, she'd bury him in the court of public opinion. I didn't have a lawyer back then, Elijah said quietly. Didn't have the money to fight her, and I didn't want my son growing up in a war zone. So he walked away, but not completely. He kept tabs, quietly, through a friend of a friend who lived near Amber's old apartment. He saw pictures on social media, heard whispers when Hunter started school. He'd even reached out once through a mutual acquaintance, but Amber shut it down, claimed he was stalking her. I never stopped caring, he said, but I didn't think I had a shot until I saw what she did to you. That cake thing? That's not new. That's learned behavior. And if she's turning her son into her, then maybe it's time I stopped being afraid. We met in person 2 days later. I brought Max to my neighbor's house, and we met at a neutral coffee shop. Elijah looked tired, older than he should have for 37. But there was a steadiness in his eyes that told me he wasn't here to vent. He was here to act. We sat in that booth for 2 hours, going over everything. My lawsuit, Amber's online smear campaign, the permit, the house, the fake lease, her weaponized victim narrative. Then he dropped the real bomb. She's been collecting child support, he said. From a man who doesn't have custody. From me. For a kid I haven't been allowed to see. She files it every year as part of her single mother hardship paperwork. My jaw clenched. How? Through a friend. She's using him as a shell. Pays him to claim he's the custodial parent on paper, then files under his name. It's illegal, but it's buried in paperwork, and no one's questioned it. He didn't have the full paper trail, but he had enough breadcrumbs to start unraveling it. That's when the wheels began to turn. Because for the first time, I wasn't reacting. I wasn't just trying to defend myself from Amber's chaos. I was preparing something careful, something deserved. The setup began that night. Step 1 was documentation. Elijah and I both went to Dana, my lawyer. I laid out the family drama, the lawsuit, the fake daycare permit, the online defamation. He laid out everything he had, financial records, emails, old photos, a timeline of events going back 7 years. Dana listened. She asked questions, took notes. Then she nodded, folded her hands on the desk, and said, "She's built her house out of lies. We're going to knock on the door and see how fast it collapses." Over the next few weeks, we worked in silence. Elijah quietly refiled for partial custody, with Dana's help and a new legal aid foundation backing him. They specialized in cases involving alienated fathers. He didn't aim to take Hunter away, just to get joint rights. Enough to expose the false narrative Amber had built. Meanwhile, Dana and I filed a motion to dismiss Amber's original lawsuit, with evidence of her fraud attached, including a notarized letter from Elijah stating she had no legal right to use the property for business, and confirming she lied to both the city and him. Then we turned to the house. I couldn't just throw her out without notice, but I could tighten the screws. Dana had me file a 60-day vacate notice, now official and documented through the county. No loopholes, no ambiguity. We also filed a complaint with the city zoning board, flagging the daycare permit again, this time with the added information about Amber collecting money from a fabricated business address. That triggered an audit. But the best move? That came from Elijah. He'd kept one bank statement, just one, from back when he and Amber were still together. It showed a large deposit from my account to hers. The original money I transferred when I first offered to help her all those years ago. "I always thought I'd need this one day," he said, sliding it across the table. It was dated, labeled, tagged as a loan to cover relocation and utilities. Not a gift, a loan. And while I'd never enforced it, Dana grinned when she saw it. "We can use this to establish a pattern," she said. "Show the court that your help was conditional, not open-ended. That she accepted support as temporary, not permanent. It undermines her entire wrongful eviction narrative." We were assembling something slow, quiet, devastating. While Amber kept spinning stories online about her cruel brother and her lost dreams, we were setting a stage. And then, the final piece fell into place. Elijah found something in an old shared Google Drive folder, something Amber had forgotten to delete. A scanned image of a daycare flyer she'd designed over a year ago, with my house address printed on the bottom. She'd been planning this since before Hunter ruined Max's cake. Before the permit. Before the lawsuit. It had all been part of the long con. A soft takeover of the house, using family ties to keep me quiet until she could flip the narrative and stake a claim. If I'd said no, I'd be the villain. If I said yes, I'd be footing the bill forever. But now I had everything. The false claims, the shady child support filings, the forged business paperwork, the public defamation, and a witness who'd once loved her enough to overlook the lies and now wanted his son back. All I had to do was wait for the right moment to move. And that moment was coming. Because the court hearing for the eviction was in 9 days. And Amber had no idea what was waiting for her inside that courthouse. Not just a lawyer. Not just a brother tired of being used. But someone who knew every corner of the story she'd tried to bury. And someone else who had finally stepped out of the shadows to help me burn the lies down. The trap was set, and she was walking straight into it. Now I just had to keep my mouth shut until it all unfolded. Courtrooms always smell the same, like old paper, stress, and whatever brand of coffee the clerk microwaved at 7 a.m. I'd been in a few for real estate disputes, zoning hearings, a messy tenant thing once. But this one felt different. Heavier. Like every slow burn, every swallowed insult, every time I'd bitten my tongue around Amber was sitting right there beside me. It was eviction day. Amber walked in 13 minutes late, sunglasses on her head, hair thrown into a messy bun like she was starring in her own dramatic docu-series. Hunter trailed behind her, tapping a toy truck against the wall. She didn't look at me at first. She made a show of sighing loudly as she sat down, pulling out her phone as if she were the real victim of an inconvenience. When she finally glanced my way, her expression flickered, first smug, then unsure, then angry. Dana, my lawyer, leaned close and whispered, "She brought no counsel. This is going to go very fast." Amber must have thought this was going to be a casual sibling spat the judge would smooth over in the name of family harmony. But she had no idea what was waiting for her. No idea that Elijah, quiet, steady Elijah, was sitting in the back row, hands folded, expression unreadable. When the judge called our case, Amber strutted forward and launched into a speech before anyone asked her a single question. "He's throwing me out," she said dramatically, pointing at me like I'd keyed her car in the courthouse parking lot. After years of me living there. No warning, no reason, just cruelty. And now my son and I are being put on the street because he's embarrassed over some birthday misunderstanding. The judge, a gray-haired man with the patience of a saint, held up a hand. "Ms. Wallace, please wait until you are asked to speak." Amber huffed, crossed her arms, and leaned back in the rickety wooden chair like she'd been gravely wronged. Dana stood and handed the judge our packet. "Your Honor, this is a formal response and countermotion. It includes documented proof of property ownership, proof of a 60-day notice served properly, and evidence regarding fraudulent attempts by Ms. Wallace to claim managerial rights to a property she does not own." The judge skimmed the documents. Notarized, dated, and verified through the county. He tapped the stack. "Ms. Wallace, this contradicts everything you've just said." Amber's jaw dropped open. "He's lying. I lived there for years. That makes it mine by residency." "That is not how property law works," the judge replied. She opened her mouth again, but Dana wasn't done. "And Your Honor," Dana said smoothly, "there is additional context relevant to Ms. Wallace's pattern of false claims." She motioned toward the back row. Elijah stood. Amber went pale. Absolutely ghost white. "Elijah Martin," he said clearly for the record. "Father of Hunter Wallace." The room went still. Even Hunter stopped tapping his truck. "I have submitted my own affidavit," Elijah continued, handing a copy to the clerk, detailing Ms. Wallace's attempts to use shell accounts to misrepresent custody and collect fraudulent child support, as well as copies of messages and documents showing ongoing deception and misuse of financial assistance from Mr. Wallace. Amber's voice cracked. "You don't get to talk. You abandoned." Elijah didn't raise his voice. "No. You pushed me out. You threatened to destroy me if I fought back." He turned to the judge. "I'm currently filing for joint custody. Ms. Wallace has repeatedly weaponized false narratives to manipulate friends, family, and legal entities, including using Mr. Wallace's property for unauthorized business filings." Dana stepped forward again, all of which speaks to her credibility regarding the current eviction case. Amber sputtered, "You can't do this." The judge looked over his glasses at her. Ms. Wallace, do you have any legal documentation proving your claims? Any lease? Any written agreement? Any proof of ownership, rent payments, or business authorization? Amber's lips trembled. No, but do you have counsel? No. Are you contesting the legitimacy of the documents submitted by the defendant? She sank back into the chair. I didn't think he'd do this to me. The judge set the papers aside. Ms. Wallace, you lived in the property rent-free as an act of goodwill by your brother. He served proper notice. He has provided evidence of fraudulent actions on your part. This eviction is valid and will proceed. Amber let out a sound halfway between a gasp and a sob. What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? Respectfully, the judge said, that is outside the scope of this hearing. It was done in minutes. But the fallout was just beginning. Amber didn't speak to me when we walked out of the courtroom. She stared at me with an expression I'd seen only once before, back when we were kids, and Mom caught her breaking a vase she'd tried to blame on me. That same hollow disbelief. The same dawning realization that her story wasn't going to be the one people believed anymore. She stormed down the steps, grabbed Hunter's arm, and practically dragged him toward her car. Elijah watched them go, a quiet sadness in his eyes. She's not going to make this easy, he murmured. She never has, I said. He nodded once, firmly. But I'm not walking away again. And for the first time, I believed him. The eviction was carried out legally, respectfully, quietly. No police escort. No big scene. Just a scheduled move-out date, a few signatures, and a property inspection. Amber left the house in worse shape than she found it. Nothing catastrophic, but enough scratches, dents, and broken fixtures to show she didn't care anymore. She didn't look at me, didn't say a word. Just shoved a set of keys into my palm and walked away, head down, shoulders tense, Hunter following silently behind her. A week later, her Facebook account vanished. So did the posts, the smear campaigns, the little jabs. Family members stopped calling, too. Some embarrassed, some pretending they had never picked sides. But the biggest shift came from the court's response to Elijah's filings. Turns out, the judge took the fraud allegations seriously. Very seriously. Amber was ordered to provide full financial documentation for the last 5 years. Every child support claim, every bank transfer, every form tied to the friend who'd been posing as the custodial parent. Investigators dug deeper. Within a month, her fake filings unraveled. The daycare permit fraud got flagged to a separate department, triggering yet another review. And when her friend was questioned, he panicked and confessed everything. Amber's house of cards didn't fall. It crumpled all at once. Custody hearings began. Elijah gained supervised visitation almost immediately. When Hunter saw him for the first time in years, he didn't scream or hide or cling to Amber like she'd always claimed. He just stared at Elijah for a long moment, then asked softly, "Do you like dinosaurs?" Elijah cried after that visit. He didn't hide it. And over time, Hunter started warming to him, responding, smiling, asking questions, drawing pictures with 2 houses instead of 1. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. And me? I rebuilt quietly. Business improved once all the drama faded from the neighborhood gossip mill. Greg and I sold 2 properties that spring. Max started soccer. We cleaned the dinosaur frosting stain off the patio table, though a faint green tint still catches the light on sunny days. Sometimes I catch myself looking at it and thinking how everything, really started over a ruined cake. Not because the cake mattered, but because it was the moment I finally saw the truth. Keeping the peace isn't the same as having peace. I stopped choosing silence. I stopped accepting chaos disguised as family. And in doing so, I gave Max a father who actually stood up for himself. And I gave myself something I hadn't had in years. A life without walking on eggshells. The last time I saw Amber was outside the courthouse after another custody hearing. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse. She just looked at me, tired, brittle, cracked in places she never thought she would be. "I hope you're happy," she said quietly. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I didn't throw her words back at her. I just said, "I'm finally honest." She blinked, as if she didn't understand the sentence. Then she turned away. And that was it. No fireworks. No dramatic collapse. Just the quiet truth settling where lies used to sit. Months later, when things had calmed and routines had settled, Max asked me something while we were walking to the car after soccer practice. "Dad, Why did Hunter's mom get mad at you? I thought for a moment before answering. Some people get upset when the truth stops working in their favor. He nodded slowly, as if filing that away for some future moment in his life. We got in the car. He buckled his seatbelt. I turned the key. And as we drove home, windows down, warm air blowing in, Max humming some song he'd made up, I felt something settle in me. Not victory, not spite, just peace. Clean, quiet peace. After years of chaos, years of swallowing my words, years of letting someone else write the story, the ending finally belonged to me. And the final line? I didn't lose a sister. I stopped losing myself.
Momentarily. Yeah. They have some non-toxic solutions. One of them is they have this new device, which is like the same way these machines pull the crops out of the ground. These machines go over the crops and zap all the non-essential crops with a laser beam. Non-essential crops, non-essential plants. So weeds, I would say. So as the corn's growing or whatever else it is, they're zapping all the other stuff that's growing around it, that's sucking up all the resources, all the weeds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good step.
That's a great step.
Because it minimizes the use of pesticides.
Exactly. Yeah. And I asked, does it have any residual effect on the food? He said, no. Well, that's great. But then, farmers, one of the big problems is they're already barely making money. Yeah. So if you now require them to spend, X amount of dollars on some gigantic weed zapping laser that has to cover who knows how many acres, they're running these I'm sure you're aware, but monocrop agriculture, for people who've never seen, some of these places that grow corn and wheat, you're talking about these massive pieces of land that only grow one thing, which in nature doesn't exist. Right. So, of course, nature wants to rectify that. Nature's like, why is there only wheat here? You need weeds. And so, birds drop seeds, all these seeds fly in the wind, and then all these things grow. So you're going to have to get these machines that are capable of traveling over all of those crops and zapping out all the weeds. How much is that going to cost to people that are already struggling?
Yeah.
Because the American farmers are barely getting by. Barely, and we need them. And, the last thing you want to do is burden them with another cost. But also, the use of, especially when it comes to things like wheat, because they're using it after they harvest the wheat to dry it out quicker so that it doesn't grow mold on it. That's why they're using glyphosate. So it's not even as a pesticide.
Mm-hmm.
They're using
know that.
Yeah, they're using it as a desiccator.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's why so many theorized to be why so many people in this country have a problem with bread, It should make sense.
And with their taint, no.
And their taint, yeah. A lot of taint problems. A lot of people are complaining. But it's so weird that we're so intelligent and so informed, and, now we all have supercomputers in our pockets that have access to things like Perplexity that can answer any questions you have about anything. But yet we're being poisoned by the very food that we eat, the coffee that we drink, the clothing that we wear.
The water we drink.
Everything.
Yeah.
Here's a good question. Are there any good filters on a consumer level that will remove a lot of these chemicals from water that a person can buy?
I can't name any brands.
Right, but are they available?
But yes, there are. But
is it reverse osmosis? Like, what are the ones that work the best?
I'll tell you my solution in my house.
Please.
Okay, that's very personal. We distill our water.
Mm-hmm.
So the water out of the tap goes into a big container, and then it's boiled. Steam is formed, crosses over, and the steam is condensed into another container, right?
Right.
And that has nothing in it and removes everything. And by the way, all germs also. So that's what we've chosen. And in this thing that sits on the counter, my husband does this every other day. It's kind of a nuisance, but not too bad. And water is fantastic.
Do you have to remineralize it?